The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window as I sipped my coffee, savoring the quiet moment before the day's chaos. Little did I know, the bombshell that was about to drop would shatter my world forever. You know, Elijah's always had a knack for saving for a rainy day, hasn't he? Eudora's casual remark cut through the silence like a knife. Such a shame the kids might not see a dime of it. I froze, the mug halfway to my lips. Wait, Eudora, what are you talking about? What money? Her eyes narrowed, a sly smile playing on her lips. Oh, didn't he tell you? Elijah's been squirreling away funds for years, keeping it all to himself. A cold dread washed over me as the implications sank in. The college funds we'd been meticulously saving for Ethan and Lily, gone? Betrayed by the man I trusted most? The front door slammed, and Elijah strode in, his usual confident swagger faltering when he saw our expressions. What's going on? I rounded on him, fury building with each word. Is it true? Have you been hiding money from us? He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. Marianne, it's not what you think. I was just trying to secure our future. Our future? I scoffed. Or yours. How could you do this to our children? Eudora chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. She never did understand the importance of financial security, did she, Elijah? White-hot anger coursed through my veins as decades of resentment toward my controlling mother-in-law bubbled to the surface. Stay out of this, Eudora. You've meddled enough in our lives. Elijah's jaw tightened, and he stepped closer, his voice low and menacing. Don't speak to my mother that way. She's only looking out for our best interests. Our best interests? I laughed bitterly. Or yours and hers? When have you ever considered what's best for me or the kids? The words hung heavy in the air, exposing the deep cracks in the facade of our perfect family. In that moment, I realized how little control I truly had over my life, my children's futures, even my own happiness. But as I looked into Elijah's cold, unapologetic eyes, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not be a passive bystander any longer. It was time to fight for what was rightfully ours and reclaim the life we deserved. The battle lines were drawn, and there would be no turning back. As the dust settled from our explosive confrontation, memories of the early days of my marriage came flooding back, a stark contrast to the present turmoil. I was a young, ambitious woman back then, fresh out of college with a promising career ahead of me. But when Elijah proposed, swept up in the whirlwind of love and dreams for our future, I made the difficult choice to leave my job and support his entrepreneurial aspirations. Elijah, I left my job to support your dreams, I had said, my voice laced with uncertainty. Why can't we make decisions together? He had cupped my face in his hands, his eyes brimming with adoration. I'm doing what's best for all of us, Marianne. Trust me. And I did. Foolishly, I trusted him, believing that our partnership was built on mutual respect and shared goals. Little did I know that the seeds of discord had already been sown, planted by the ever-present shadow of Eudora, Elijah's overbearing mother. From the moment I stepped into their lives, she made it clear that I would never be good enough for her precious son. Every decision I made, every opinion I voiced, was met with thinly veiled disdain and criticism. A woman's place is in the home, supporting her husband, she would sneer, her words cutting deeper than any knife. Elijah, ever the dutiful son, would nod along, his allegiance firmly rooted in his mother's twisted ideals. As the years passed, Eudora's influence only grew stronger, seeping into every aspect of our lives like a insidious poison. She dictated how we raised our children, how we spent our money, even how we decorated our home. And Elijah, blinded by his devotion to her, allowed it all to happen, slowly stripping away my autonomy and sense of self-worth. The resentment festered within me, a bitter seed that took root and grew with each passing day. I had sacrificed so much for this family, only to be treated like a mere accessory, a trophy wife to be paraded around and controlled. But now, in the wake of Elijah's ultimate betrayal, that resentment had blossomed into a burning rage, fueling my determination to reclaim what was rightfully mine. No longer would I be a passive bystander, allowing Eudora and Elijah to dictate the course of my life. It was time to fight back, to shed the shackles of their oppression and forge my own path, no matter the cost. As I look back on the early strains of our marriage, I realize that the cracks had been there all along, hidden beneath the veneer of domestic bliss. And now those cracks had shattered wide open, exposing the ugly truth that had been festering for far too long. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for war. The cracks in our once idyllic family life grew wider with each passing day, as Elijah's domineering nature seeped into every aspect of our children's lives. It started with our son, Ethan. Brilliant and driven, he had always marched to the beat of his own drum, much to Elijah's chagrin. "Ethan, you're meant to take over the business one day," Elijah would declare, his voice brooking no argument. "It's your legacy." But Ethan, ever the free spirit, would shake his head defiantly. "Dad, I have my own dreams. Why can't you understand that?" Elijah's jaw would tighten, his eyes flashing with barely concealed anger. "Don't be foolish, son. This is your destiny, whether you like it or not." I would watch these exchanges with a sinking heart, powerless to intervene as Elijah crushed our son's aspirations under the weight of his own ambitions. And then there was Lily, our sweet, sensitive daughter, who longed for nothing more than her father's approval and affection. "Daddy, did you see the painting I made for you?" she would ask, her eyes shining with hope. But Elijah would barely spare her a glance, his mind already consumed by thoughts of work and business deals. "That's nice, dear," he would mutter distractedly, before turning his attention back to his ever-present laptop. Lily's shoulders would slump, her face falling as she realized once again that she was an afterthought in her father's world. It broke my heart to see the light in her eyes dim a little more with each dismissal. But Elijah remained oblivious, too consumed by his own selfish desires to notice the pain he inflicted on our children. And through it all, Eudora's poisonous influence lingered, whispering in Elijah's ear, feeding his ego and reinforcing his belief that he alone knew what was best for our family. "They need a strong hand to guide them, Elijah," she would croon. "You can't let them stray from the path you've set." Elijah would nod, his jaw set in grim determination, and I would watch helplessly as he tightened his grip on our children's lives, suffocating their dreams and individuality with his iron fist. But as the resentment and anger simmered within me, I knew that I could no longer stand idly by. My children deserved better than a life of oppression and unfulfilled potential. It was time to take a stand, to break free from the shackles of Elijah's control and reclaim our lives no matter the cost. As I looked at Ethan's defiant eyes and Lily's crestfallen expression, I vowed to myself that I would not let them become casualties in Elijah's war for dominance. This was my family, my life, and I would fight tooth and nail to protect it, even if it meant going to war with the man I had once loved. The tension in our household had reached a boiling point, and it all came to a head during one fateful family dinner. As we gathered around the table, the air was thick with unspoken resentments and simmering anger. Elijah sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of stern authority, while Eudora hovered nearby, her beady eyes watching my every move like a hawk. Ethan and Lily exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the impending storm. I tried in vain to maintain a semblance of normalcy. "Lily, how was school today?" Before she could answer, Eudora cut in with a derisive snort. As if she'd have anything worthwhile to say, "The girl's as dull as a doorknob." Lily's face fell, and I felt a surge of protective fury rise within me. "Eudora, please stop undermining my decisions with the kids." Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned forward, her voice dripping with contempt. "As if you've made any good decisions. You're just as useless in this family as you were in Elijah's business." The words hung in the air like a slap, and I recoiled as if struck. Elijah remained silent, his jaw clenched, offering no defense against his mother's cruelty. Something inside me snapped, years of pent-up frustration and resentment bubbling to the surface. "How dare you speak to me like that in my own home?" I snarled, slamming my fist on the table. "You've meddled in our lives for far too long, Eudora." Eudora's eyes widened in mock surprise. Oh, the little woman finally grew a backbone, did she? Elijah's chair scraped against the floor as he rose to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "Don't speak to my mother that way, Marianne. She's only looking out for our best interests." I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow and mirthless. "Our best interests, or yours and hers? When have you ever considered what's best for me or the kids?" The words hung heavy in the air, exposing the deep cracks in the facade of our perfect family. Ethan and Lily sat frozen, their eyes darting between us like spectators at a tragic play. Elijah's nostrils flared, and he leaned across the table, his voice low and menacing. "Don't question my authority in this household, Marianne. I am the head of this family, and my word is law." In that moment, I saw him for what he truly was, a man consumed by his own ego, blinded by his mother's twisted influence, and willing to sacrifice everything, even his own children, in pursuit of power and control. And as I looked into his cold, unyielding eyes, I knew that our marriage, our family, had reached a point of no return. The illusion had shattered, and there was no going back. The battle lines were drawn, and I would fight to the bitter end, no matter the cost. In the aftermath of the disastrous family dinner, a cold, hard resolve took root within me. I had given everything for this family, my career, my dreams, my very sense of self, only to be belittled and betrayed at every turn. No more. As Elijah stormed off, Eudora's poisonous laughter ringing in his wake, I knew that I could no longer stand idly by. It was time to take matters into my own hands and uncover the full extent of his deception. Late at night, when the house was still, I would slip into Elijah's study, rifling through his meticulously organized files and records. At first, the evidence was sparse, a few suspicious transactions here, a discrepancy in the books there. But as I dug deeper, a more sinister pattern began to emerge. Hidden offshore accounts, falsified financial statements, embezzlement on a massive scale. The man I had once loved, the man I had sacrificed everything for, was nothing more than a fraud, a master manipulator who had been bleeding our family dry for years. With each new revelation, my anger and determination grew, fueling me to dig deeper, to leave no stone unturned in my quest for the truth. "I've given everything for this family," I muttered to myself, clenching my fists around the damning evidence in my hands. "I won't let him destroy the kids' futures, too." Ethan and Lily's faces flashed before my mind's eye. Ethan, his dreams of independence crushed under the weight of his father's expectations. Lily, her spirit slowly withering from years of neglect and dismissal. They deserved better. We all did. And so, armed with the truth, I began to formulate a plan. A counterattack that would not only expose Elijah's lies, but dismantle his carefully constructed web of control once and for all. No longer would I be the meek, submissive wife, cowering in the shadows of his domineering presence. This was war, and I would fight with every ounce of strength I possessed to protect my children and reclaim the life that had been stolen from me. As I pored over the incriminating documents, my mind raced with possibilities, strategies, and contingencies. I would need allies, people I could trust to stand by my side when the inevitable confrontation came. Ethan and Lily would be my first line of defense. They deserved to know the truth about their father, to understand the depths of his betrayal. Together, we would form an unbreakable united front, a force to be reckoned with. And then, when the time was right, I would strike, unleashing a torrent of revelations that would shatter Elijah's carefully cultivated facade and bring his empire crumbling down around him. No more lies, no more manipulation, no more living in fear of a man who had proven himself unworthy of my loyalty or my love. As I clutched the damning evidence in my hands, a sense of grim determination washed over me. This was the point of no return, the moment where I would take back control of my life and my family's future. And Elijah would soon learn that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. With the damning evidence in hand, I knew it was time to confront Elijah and shatter the illusion of our perfect family once and for all. I found him in his study, poring over financial reports with a furrowed brow. As I entered, he glanced up, his expression hardening when he saw the steely resolve in my eyes. "Marianne," he said, his tone clipped. "What is it now?" I didn't mince words. "Elijah, I found everything. The hidden accounts, the embezzlement. You've been deceiving us all." For a moment he froze, his mask of indifference slipping as the realization of his exposed lies sank in. But then, just as quickly, he regained his composure, leaning back in his chair with a condescending smirk. "You wouldn't understand, Marianne," he scoffed. "It's too complicated for you." Rage bubbled within me at his dismissive tone, his utter lack of remorse. "Don't patronize me, Elijah. I understand perfectly well. You've been stealing from our family, jeopardizing our children's futures for your own selfish gain." His eyes narrowed, and he leaned forward, his voice low and menacing. Everything I've done has been for this family, to secure our legacy, our power. Our power? I laughed bitterly. Or yours and Eudora's? When have you ever considered what's best for me or the kids? His jaw tightened at the mention of his mother's name, and I knew I had struck a nerve. Don't bring my mother into this. She's the only one who truly understands what it takes to build an empire. In that moment, the truth became painfully clear. Elijah's actions, his manipulation, his utter disregard for our family's well-being had all been fueled by his mother's relentless meddling and his own insatiable hunger for power. You're a fool, Marianne, he spat, rising from his chair. You've never appreciated the sacrifices I've made, the lengths I've gone to protect what's ours. Protect? I shook my head in disbelief. You've done nothing but destroy. Our marriage, our family, our children's futures, all sacrificed on the altar of your ego and Eudora's twisted ambitions. His face contorted with rage, and for a moment I feared he might strike me. But then, just as quickly, the storm passed, and he straightened his tie, regaining his composure. You'll never understand, Marianne, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. You're too weak, too emotional. This is the real world, and in the real world, only the strong survive. As he brushed past me, his shoulder colliding with mine in a deliberate show of dominance, I felt something shift within me. The fear, the doubt, the years of subjugation, they all melted away, replaced by a burning determination to take back what was mine. Elijah might have thought he held all the cards, but he had underestimated me for the last time. I was done playing by his rules, done living in the shadow of his manipulation and Eudora's poisonous influence. It was time to fight back, to dismantle their twisted empire brick by brick and reclaim the life and family they had stolen from me. The battle lines were drawn, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. In the wake of my confrontation with Elijah, a newfound determination took root within me. I would no longer be a passive bystander, allowing him and his mother to dictate the course of our lives. It was time to take action. I knew that dismantling Elijah's web of lies and manipulation would require more than just my efforts alone. I needed allies, people who shared my resolve and understood the depths of his betrayal. And so, I turned to the two people who mattered most, Ethan and Lily. Gathering them in the living room, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the difficult conversation ahead. Kids, there's something you need to know about your father, I began, my voice steady, despite the turmoil churning within me. Ethan's brow furrowed, while Lily's eyes widened with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. What is it, Mom? Ethan asked, leaning forward in his chair. I didn't mince words. Your father has been lying to us for years. He's been embezzling money, hiding assets, putting his own selfish desires above our family's well-being. A heavy silence hung in the air as the weight of my words sank in. Lily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But why? She whispered, her voice trembling. How could he do this to us? I shook my head, my heart aching for the pain I knew this revelation would cause them. It's a long, complicated story, but the bottom line is that we can't trust him anymore. He's been manipulating us all, influenced by his mother's twisted ambitions. Ethan's jaw clenched, and I could see the anger simmering behind his eyes. That's why he's been pushing me to join the business, isn't it? To further his own agenda? I nodded, reaching out to squeeze his hand. I'm afraid so, sweetheart, but we don't have to play by his rules anymore. A determined gleam flickered in Ethan's gaze, and he straightened his shoulders. What do you need us to do, Mom? In that moment, I felt a surge of pride and gratitude for my children's unwavering support. We might have been fractured and beaten down by Elijah's manipulations, but in that moment, we were a united front, a force to be reckoned with. We're going to expose him, I said, my voice ringing with conviction. We're going to bring his lies into the light and dismantle his control over this family once and for all. Lily nodded, her eyes hardening with resolve. He's hurt us for the last time. I'm in. Ethan mirrored her determination. Count me in too, Mom. It's time we took our lives back. As we began to strategize, plotting our counterattack against Elijah's twisted empire, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. For too long, I had been the victim, the helpless bystander, in my own life. But no more. With my children by my side, I was a force to be reckoned with. A woman scorned, yes, but also a mother fiercely protective of her family's well-being. And Elijah would soon learn that he had underestimated us all for the last time. The battle lines were drawn, and we would emerge victorious no matter the cost. With Ethan and Lily by my side, our united front solidified. It was time to bring Elijah's twisted empire crumbling down around him. We had spent weeks meticulously planning our counterattack, gathering evidence and strategizing our approach. The day of reckoning arrived, and we called an impromptu family meeting, ensuring that Eudora would be present as well. As they filed into the living room, Elijah's brow furrowed at the sight of our grim expressions. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I took a deep breath, steeling my resolve. "It's time for the truth to come out, Elijah. We know everything. The embezzlement, the hidden accounts, the lies." His face paled as the realization dawned, but he quickly regained his composure, shooting a venomous glare in my direction. "You've gone too far this time, Marianne." Ethan stepped forward, his jaw set in determination. "No, Dad, you're the one who's gone too far. How could you betray us like this? Jeopardize our futures for your own greed?" Elijah's nostrils flared, and he turned to Eudora, seeking her support. "Mother, tell them they're being ridiculous. You know I've only ever had this family's best interests at heart." But Eudora remained silent, her eyes downcast, unable to meet our accusing stares. Lily's voice trembled as she spoke, years of pent-up hurt and resentment bubbling to the surface. "Was any of it real, Dad? Or were we just pawns in your game for power and control?" Elijah's mask of indifference slipped, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something akin to regret in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the familiar arrogance and disdain. "You're all fools," he spat, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have no idea the sacrifices I've made, the lengths I've gone to secure our legacy." I shook my head, my heart heavy with the weight of his betrayal. "Your legacy? Or Eudora's twisted vision of what our family should be? When did you ever stop to consider what we wanted, what dreams we had for ourselves?" Elijah opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. "No more lies, Elijah. It's over. We're done living in the shadow of your manipulation and deceit." Turning to Ethan and Lily, I felt a surge of pride and determination. This is the start of a new chapter for us, one where we value honesty and mutual respect above all else. Lily's eyes shone with unshed tears, but her voice was steady as she spoke. "Mom, we believe in you. We're ready to rebuild together as a family." In that moment, as Elijah's empire crumbled around him, his carefully cultivated facade of power and control shattered, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The years of oppression, the sacrifices, the pain, it had all been worth it to reach this moment of liberation. As Elijah stormed out, his pride in tatters, I knew that our journey was far from over. Rebuilding our lives, healing the wounds inflicted by his betrayal, would be a long and arduous process. But for the first time in decades, I felt truly free. Free from the shackles of his manipulation, free from the toxic influence of Eudora's meddling, free to forge my own path and reclaim the life that had been stolen from me. And as I looked into the eyes of my children, their love and support shining through, I knew that we would emerge from this trial stronger than ever before. A family united by truth, resilience, and an unbreakable bond that no force, not even Elijah's twisted ambitions, could ever hope to sever. I woke up, my eyes slowly adjusting to the dimly lit room. The curtains were drawn, and only a sliver of sunlight peeked through. As I reached for the lamp on the nightstand, my hand trembled, a reminder of the arduous battle I'd been fighting against the ruthless illness that had ravaged my body. "Good morning, sweetheart," Graham's voice rang out, dripping with saccharine sweetness. "How are you feeling today?" I turned to see him standing in the doorway, a broad smile plastered across his face. By his side was Elliot, his son from a previous marriage, his expression a mirror of Graham's. "I'm feeling a bit better," I rasped, my throat still raw from the treatments. Graham's smile grew wider, and he exchanged a knowing glance with Elliot. "That's wonderful news, dear," he said, his tone laced with something I couldn't quite place. Elliot stepped forward, his eyes locked on mine. "Yeah, we're both so happy to hear that." He chimed in, his voice lacking the sincerity of his words. A sudden chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Graham and Elliot had been nothing but attentive during my illness, but there was an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't ignore. As I struggled to sit up, Graham rushed to my side, his hand resting on my arm in a gesture that was meant to be comforting, but felt oddly possessive. "Once she's gone, all this will be ours." "Elliot," he murmured, his voice low but carrying a weight that hit me like a ton of bricks. My heart dropped, and the room seemed to spin around me. The words echoed in my mind, their implication crystal clear. They were waiting for me to die, their eyes fixed on the prize. My hard-earned wealth, and the boutique I had poured my life into. Tears stung my eyes as the crushing realization washed over me. The man I had loved, the man I had trusted with my heart and soul, was nothing more than a deceitful opportunist, and his own son was complicit in his schemes. In that moment, something shifted within me. The naivety that had once clouded my judgment shattered, and a new resolve took root. I would not be a victim, not in my own life, not in my own home. As Graham and Elliot turned to leave, their backs to me, I vowed silently that I would not go down without a fight. They had underestimated me, and I would make them pay for their betrayal. With a steely determination coursing through my veins, I knew that this was just the beginning. The battle lines had been drawn, and I would stop at nothing to reclaim what was rightfully mine: my dignity, my independence, and the life I had worked so hard to build. I couldn't bring myself to confront Graham and Elliot head-on. Not yet. Instead, I decided to bide my time, to gather evidence and build my case against them. As I lay in bed, feigning ignorance, my mind drifted back to the early days of my relationship with Graham. It had all started so innocently, a chance encounter at a charity gala. Graham, a wealthy businessman, had been instantly charmed by my wit and confidence. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and before long we were swept up in a whirlwind romance. "Seraphine," he had whispered, his eyes sparkling with adoration, "you are the most remarkable woman I've ever met." Caught up in the heady rush of new love, I had been blind to the warning signs. Graham's excessive flattery, his constant need for validation, and his tendency to lavish me with extravagant gifts should have raised red flags. But I was too enamored, too eager to believe that I had found the partner I had been searching for all my life. It wasn't until after our wedding that the cracks began to show. Graham's once charming demeanor morphed into something darker, more controlling. He would belittle me in front of his friends, making snide comments about my business acumen or my fashion choices. "A woman like you should be grateful to have a man like me," he would sneer, his words cutting deep. Elliot, who had been a sullen teenager when we first met, quickly fell in line with his father's twisted behavior. The two of them formed an unholy alliance, united in their disdain for me and their insatiable greed. "Why don't you just sell that stupid boutique of yours?" Elliot had once sneered, his lip curled in contempt. "It's not like you're any good at running a business." I should have left then, should have gathered my dignity and walked away from their toxic influence. But I was too proud, too stubborn to admit defeat. As the years passed, Graham's financial troubles mounted, his businesses failing one by one. It was then that his true motivation became clear. He had set his sights on my boutique, the one successful venture I had built from the ground up. "Once you're gone, your precious little shop will be mine," he had hissed, his eyes alight with malice. And now, as I lay in my sickbed, the full extent of their depravity had been revealed. They were willing to let me die, to sacrifice my life for their own selfish gain. But I was no longer the naive woman they thought they could manipulate. The fire of determination burned within me, fueling my resolve to bring them to their knees. As I watched Graham and Elliot leave the room, their shoulders slumped in disappointment at my continued survival, I knew that the time for action was drawing near. They had underestimated me, and they would pay dearly for their mistake. With my newfound determination, I wasted no time in putting my plan into motion. I knew that if I were to take down Graham and Elliot, I needed to be strategic and gather irrefutable evidence of their misdeeds. My first stop was the boutique, the very business they were so eager to get their greedy hands on. As I stepped through the doors, the familiar scent of jasmine and sandalwood enveloped me, offering a sense of comfort and familiarity in the midst of the chaos. "Seraphine!" Leo, my trusted employee, rushed over, his eyes wide with concern. What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be resting? I mustered a reassuring smile, determined not to let my personal turmoil show. I'm feeling much better, Leo. In fact, I've never been more motivated. His brow furrowed, sensing the shift in my demeanor. Is everything okay? For a moment I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. But then I remembered the unwavering loyalty Leo had shown me over the years, and I knew he deserved the truth. Graham and Elliot, I began, my voice low and steady. They've been plotting against me, waiting for me to die so they can get their hands on the boutique. Leo's jaw dropped, his expression a mix of shock and outrage. Those bastards! He exclaimed, his fists clenching at his sides. How could they do such a thing? I placed a calming hand on his arm, grateful for his unwavering support. That's why I need your help, Leo. We have to gather evidence of their schemes, anything that can expose their true motives. His eyes hardened with resolve, and he nodded firmly. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. Over the next few days, Leo and I pored over financial records, invoices and receipts, searching for any discrepancies or irregularities that could point to Graham's involvement in my business affairs. It didn't take long to uncover the first bombshell. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had been siphoned from the boutique's accounts into offshore holdings under Graham's name. That lying snake, Leo spat, slamming his fist on the desk. He's been stealing from you all this time. I felt a surge of vindication, but also a profound sense of betrayal. The man I had once loved, the man I had trusted with everything, had been robbing me blind all along. But the evidence didn't stop there. We uncovered records of lavish vacations, expensive cars, and designer watches, all purchased with funds stolen from my hard-earned business. As the puzzle pieces fell into place, a newfound determination took root within me. I would no longer be the victim of Graham's greed and deceit. It was time to take back what was rightfully mine. With Leo by my side, I began to meticulously document every shred of evidence, building an airtight case against Graham and his conniving son. They thought they could rob me of my dignity, my independence, and my livelihood, but they had gravely underestimated my resilience. As I stood in the boutique, surrounded by the very business they had tried to strip from me, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. This was my legacy, my life's work, and I would fight tooth and nail to protect it. This on, and this held all the cards. Armed with the damning evidence Leo and I had uncovered, I knew it was time to take the next step. I needed to secure my assets and ensure that Graham and Elliot couldn't wriggle their way out of the consequences they so richly deserved. That's when I reached out to Marina, my best friend and a formidable lawyer. We had known each other since college, bonding over our shared ambition and determination to succeed in a male-dominated world. Marina, I need your help, I said, my voice tense as I recounted the sordid details of Graham's betrayal. To her credit, Marina didn't flinch. She simply nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. Say no more, Sarah. We're going to make sure those bastards pay for what they've done. Over the next few days, Marina and I worked tirelessly, poring over legal documents and financial records. She was a master strategist, finding every loophole and exploiting every weakness in Graham's carefully constructed web of deceit. We need to revise your will, she said, her fingers tapping purposefully on the desk. Make sure that not a single cent of your fortune goes to that snake or his weasel of a son. I nodded, my jaw set with determination. Absolutely. They don't deserve a penny of what I've built. As we delved deeper into the legal intricacies, Marina's admiration for my strength grew. You know, most women in your position would have crumbled, she remarked, her eyes shining with pride. But not you. You're a fighter, Sarah. Her words buoyed me, reminding me of the steel that coursed through my veins. I was no longer the naive, trusting woman who had fallen for Graham's lies. I was a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. With Marina's guidance, we crafted an airtight strategy. Not only would I be protected from Graham's greed, but we would also set a trap, a carefully laid snare that would ensnare him in his own web of deceit. He won't see it coming, Marina grinned, her eyes glinting with anticipation. And when he does, it'll be too late. As the pieces fell into place, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Graham and Elliot had underestimated me at every turn, and now they would face the full force of my wrath. The day we finalized the legal documents, Marina raised her glass in a toast. To reclaiming what's yours, Sarah. May those snakes get everything they deserve. I clinked my glass against hers, a newfound sense of empowerment coursing through my veins. They won't know what hit them. With Marina by my side, I knew that victory was within reach. Graham and Elliot had made the grave mistake of crossing a woman who was no longer content to play the victim. I was a force to be reckoned with, and they were about to learn that lesson the hard way. As I left Marina's office, my head held high. I couldn't help but smile. The tide had turned, and the predators were about to become the prey. It was time for Graham and Elliot to face the consequences of their actions, and I would savor every moment of their downfall. With the legal groundwork laid and my assets secured, it was time to move to the next phase of my plan, confronting Graham and Elliot head-on. I knew it was a risky move, but the thrill of finally taking control of the situation was too intoxicating to resist. It was a crisp autumn evening when I invited them over for a family dinner, playing the part of the oblivious wife to perfection. As they arrived, Graham's eyes lit up with a mix of greed and surprise. "Seraphine, darling," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Are you sure you're up for hosting dinner? You should be resting." I mustered a weak smile, determined to keep up the charade. "Nonsense, Graham. I'm feeling much better, and I wanted to have a nice family meal." Elliot shot me a skeptical glance. His eyes narrowed with suspicion. "If you say so," he muttered, brushing past me into the dining room. As we sat down to eat, the tension in the air was palpable. Graham and Elliot made small talk, their eyes occasionally darting to the silverware and china, no doubt mentally appraising their potential value. Finally, as the main course was cleared away, I decided it was time to strike. "Graham, Elliot," I began, my voice steady and unwavering. "There's something I need to discuss with you both." Graham's brow furrowed, his mask of concern slipping ever so slightly. "Of course, dear. What is it?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I know what you've been up to." The silence that followed was deafening, the air thick with tension. Graham and Elliot exchanged a panicked glance, their faces draining of color. I don't know what you're talking about," Graham stammered, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape. I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile playing on my lips. "Oh, I think you do. The embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the fancy cars and vacations, all paid for with money you stole from my business." Elliot's fists clenched, his knuckles turning white. "You have no proof," he spat, his eyes blazing with fury. With a flick of my wrist, I produced a thick stack of documents. The damning evidence Leo and I had gathered. "I think you'll find that I do." Graham's face contorted into a mask of rage, his true colors finally revealed. "You conniving bitch," he snarled, slamming his fist on the table. "You think you can take everything from me?" I met his gaze unflinchingly, my resolve unwavering. "I'm not taking anything from you, Graham. I'm simply reclaiming what's rightfully mine." Elliot leaped to his feet, his chair clattering to the floor. "This isn't over," he growled, his eyes burning with hatred. "We'll make you pay for this." I couldn't help but laugh, a rich, mocking sound that only seemed to infuriate them further. "Oh, my dear boy, it's already over. You just don't know it yet." As they stormed out of the house, hurling insults and threats over their shoulders, I felt a sense of exhilaration coursing through my veins. The game was afoot, and for the first time I held all the cards. Graham and Elliot had underestimated me, thinking I was nothing more than a meek, submissive woman, but they were about to learn a brutal lesson. I was a force to be reckoned with, and I would stop at nothing to reclaim what was mine. The days following my explosive confrontation with Graham and Elliot were a whirlwind of activity. With Marina's guidance, we wasted no time in setting our legal strategy into motion. First, we filed for divorce, citing Graham's embezzlement and financial misdeeds as grounds for the dissolution of our marriage. The paperwork was airtight, backed by the mountain of evidence Leo and I had gathered. "He won't know what hit him," Marina grinned as she slid the documents across her desk for my signature. "By the time this is over, he'll be lucky to have the clothes on his back." Next, we turned our attention to the criminal charges. Graham's theft from my business, coupled with his blatant fraud and money laundering, was more than enough to ensure he faced serious consequences. As we sat in Marina's office, poring over the legal documents, a loud knock at the door interrupted our work. Marina's assistant poked her head in, her face pale. "Miss Cole, the police are here. They say they need to speak with you and Miss Westbrook immediately." Marina and I exchanged a knowing glance, silently bracing ourselves for the confrontation to come. Sure enough, two stern-faced detectives strode into the office, their eyes fixed on Graham's financials spread across Marina's desk. "Miss Westbrook?" "Mr. Westbrook," the taller detective began, his voice gruff. "We have reason to believe that you've been involved in a massive embezzlement scheme, siphoning funds from your wife's business into offshore accounts." Graham, who had been summoned to Marina's office under the guise of signing divorce papers, blanched visibly. "This is preposterous," he sputtered, his eyes darting wildly between Marina and me. "I would never do such a thing." The detective arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by Graham's bravado. "Is that so? Then perhaps you can explain these financial records?" He slid a stack of documents across the desk, the very evidence Leo and I had painstakingly gathered. Graham's eyes widened as he frantically flipped through the pages, his facade crumbling with each damning entry. This is a mistake," he stammered, his voice quavering. "These records must have been doctored." Marina let out a derisive snort, her eyes narrowed in contempt. "Save it, Graham. The jig is up, and you know it." As the detective slapped handcuffs on Graham's wrists, reading him his rights, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. The man who had once held so much power over me, the man who had sought to strip me of everything I held dear, was now being led away in disgrace. But the true triumph came when Elliot burst into the office, his face flushed with fury. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his eyes wild. "Where's my father?" Marina gestured towards the door, a wicked smile playing on her lips. "Your father is being taken into custody, Elliot. It seems his little embezzlement scheme has finally caught up with him." Elliot's jaw dropped, his eyes darting between Graham and the detectives. No, this can't be happening." I couldn't resist twisting the knife, relishing in his anguish. "Oh, but it is, Elliot. Your father's greed has finally come back to bite him, and you're next." As the detectives hauled Graham away, his muffled protests fading into the distance, I turned to face Elliot. The fear in his eyes was palpable, and I reveled in the knowledge that his world was crumbling around him. "You thought you could take everything from me," I said, my voice laced with barely contained triumph. "But in the end, you'll be lucky if you're left with the shirts on your backs." Elliot opened his mouth to protest, but the words died on his lips. He knew the game was up, and there was nothing he could do to stop the wheels of justice from turning. As he slunk out of Marina's office, his shoulders slumped in defeat. I couldn't help but savor the moment. Graham and Elliot had underestimated me at every turn, and now they were paying the ultimate price for their hubris. The battle was won, and I had emerged victorious, a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had reclaimed her power and her dignity in the face of overwhelming odds. The days leading up to Graham's trial were a whirlwind of activity. The media had caught wind of the scandal, and the story of the embezzling husband and his deceitful stepson dominated the headlines. As Marina and I arrived at the courthouse, a throng of reporters swarmed us, cameras flashing and microphones thrust in our faces. "Miss Westbrook, how do you feel knowing your husband betrayed you in such a despicable way? Do you think Graham and Elliot will receive the maximum sentence?" I pushed through the crowd, my jaw set with determination. Marina fought her way to my side, her steely gaze daring the reporters to cross her. "No comment," she barked, her voice cutting through the cacophony of questions. "We'll have our say in the courtroom." As the courtroom doors swung open, I caught my first glimpse of Graham and Elliot since their arrests. They sat at the defense table, their once arrogant demeanors replaced by a sullen, defeated air. Graham's eyes met mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw a glimmer of the man I had once loved, the charming, charismatic figure who had swept me off my feet. But that illusion was quickly shattered by the cold reality of his betrayal, and I felt nothing but contempt for the man before me. The trial was a brutal affair, with Marina systematically dismantling Graham's flimsy defense. Each witness, each piece of damning evidence, served to further unravel the web of lies he had so carefully constructed. Mr. Westbrook, you stand accused of embezzling over $2 million from your wife's business, the prosecutor stated, his voice echoing through the courtroom. How do you plead? Graham's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard, his eyes darting around the room in a desperate bid for escape. Not guilty, he croaked, the words ringing hollow even to his own ears. As the trial wore on, the weight of the evidence against Graham and Elliot became insurmountable. Bank records, financial statements, even damning testimony from former employees, all of it pointed to their guilt. Elliot, his once youthful arrogance replaced by a pale, haunted expression, took the stand in a last-ditch effort to salvage their crumbling defense. My father and I were just trying to protect our family's interests, he pleaded, his voice trembling. We never meant to cause any harm. Marina seized the opportunity, her eyes glinting with triumph. Is that so, Mr. Westbrook? Then why did you and your father make numerous attempts to conceal the embezzled funds in offshore accounts? Elliot's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged. He was caught, trapped in the inescapable web of his own lies. As the jury filed back into the courtroom, a hush fell over the gallery. The foreman stood, his expression grave, and delivered the verdict we had all been waiting for. On the charges of embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering, we find the defendants, Graham Westbrook and Elliot Westbrook, guilty on all counts. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom, but I remained steadfast, my gaze fixed on Graham and Elliot. Their faces were a study in anguish, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. As the judge handed down their sentences, lengthy prison terms, and hefty fines, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. These men, who had once held such power over me, were reduced to nothing more than common criminals, their greed and deceit laid bare for all to see. As the bailiffs led them away, Graham turned to me one last time, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. But I had none to give. He had made his choices, and now he would have to live with the consequences. In the aftermath of the trial, I found myself standing in the bustling boutique that had been at the center of this sordid saga. Leo approached me, his eyes shining with admiration. You did it, Sarah, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You beat them at their own game. I surveyed the shop, taking in the familiar sights and scents that had once brought me such joy. Now they represented something more. A symbol of my resilience, my refusal to be a victim. No, Leo, I replied, a small smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. We did it. Together, we reclaimed what was rightfully ours. As I looked toward the future, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But with the strength and determination I had discovered within myself, I was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, stronger, wiser, and forever unbroken. The months following Graham and Elliot's sentencing were a whirlwind of activity. With the legal battles finally behind me, I was able to turn my attention to rebuilding my life and my business. The first order of business was revitalizing the boutique. I poured every ounce of my energy into breathing new life into the place that had once been the source of so much turmoil. Leo was by my side every step of the way, his unwavering support and loyalty a constant source of strength. Together, we overhauled the decor, updated the merchandise, and implemented new marketing strategies to attract a fresh wave of customers. This place is going to be better than ever? Sarah? Leo beamed as we surveyed our handiwork. Just you wait and see. And he was right. Within a matter of months, the boutique was thriving once again, a testament to the resilience and determination that had carried me through my darkest days. But my journey didn't end there. As I stood amidst the racks of designer clothing and the sparkling displays, I couldn't help but reflect on the countless women who had found themselves in situations similar to mine, trapped in abusive relationships, stripped of their dignity and independence by the very people who were supposed to love and protect them. It was then that the idea took root, a foundation dedicated to empowering and supporting women who had endured the kind of betrayal and deceit that I had faced, a safe haven where they could rebuild their lives, reclaim their strength, and emerge as the warriors they were always meant to be. With a newfound sense of purpose, I immersed myself in the planning and execution of this ambitious endeavor. I poured my heart and soul into creating a comprehensive support system, complete with legal resources, counseling services, and vocational training programs. The day the foundation's doors opened, I stood before a crowd of supporters, my heart swelling with pride and determination. Too many women have had their voices silenced, their spirits crushed by those who sought to control and exploit them, I declared, my voice ringing out with conviction. But no more. This foundation is a sanctuary, a place where you can find the strength to reclaim your power and forge a new path, one defined by resilience, courage, and an unwavering belief in yourselves. The cheers and applause that followed were deafening, a resounding affirmation that my mission had struck a chord. Women from all walks of life, united in their shared experiences, embraced me with tears of gratitude and hope shining in their eyes. In the months and years that followed, the foundation flourished, becoming a beacon of hope and empowerment for countless women who had endured the unimaginable. I poured my heart and soul into mentoring and guiding them, sharing the lessons I had learned through my own ordeal. And as I stood before each graduating class, watching these remarkable women stride across the stage with their heads held high, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of pride and fulfillment. They were the living embodiments of resilience, proof that even in the darkest of times, the human spirit could prevail. As for me, I had embarked on a journey I never could have imagined, one that had taken me from the depths of despair to the heights of personal triumph. The woman I had become was a far cry from the naive, trusting soul who had fallen prey to Graham's machinations. I was a warrior, a survivor, and a beacon of hope for all those who had been wronged. And as I looked toward the future, I knew that my work was far from over. There were countless battles yet to be fought, countless lives to be reclaimed from the shadows of oppression and deceit. But I was ready. Armed with the strength and wisdom born of my experiences, I would continue to forge ahead, lighting the way for others to follow. For in the end, that was the true essence of victory, not just reclaiming what was rightfully mine, but empowering others to do the same.